Movie reviews, one major part of a film's life that extends beyond the process of filmmaking and largely dictates its longevity as a product and piece of art. When starting out, Pixar was a juggernaut when it came to reviews. The reception was often golden, winning back to back at most major award shows, and continuously producing culturally relevant productions and raking in cash while doing so. Pixar is still able to obtain the higher reviews and awards in the modern age, though there's certainly more competition now in this regard, as showcasing a higher prestige within commercial animation wasn't as common back in the 2000s. The prestige the studio was able to encompass was on display quite heavily from their inauguration into film production through the release of Toy Story 3, as the latter two of that era were even nominated for the coveted Best Picture at the Academy Awards, though critics did speak on a slight dip in quality for 2006's Cars. This video isn't about the reception of the first Cars, though initial complaints criticized its pacing, world building, and being more commercial than other Pixar works, though overall the film was generally received quite positively. But the same can't be said for its 2011 sequel, the one, the only, Cars 2. The film was announced back in 2008, and while this time period is far less documented on the internet, you can still find comments on forums with Cars fans excited and some general Pixar fans excited, while others more disappointed, as they would have rather seen other sequels, especially one to The Incredibles. I'm a bit surprised I didn't come across a bit more disdain for the sequel upon announcement, as I remember a lot of that when Cars 3 was announced, but perhaps that's because a lot of the goodwill of the franchise had been lost, happening pretty soon after the release of Cars 2. So let's talk about the film itself. While the first film stars the one and only Lightning McQueen, a rookie racer with a major ego who finds himself in a small town in the middle of nowhere, where he learns to take things slow. The second film stars his best friend Mater, a breakout character who played a secondary role in the original, in a globe-trotting espionage adventure. That's a brief way to describe it. There's really a lot going on here. I think most of us know, though, it's a drastic jump in terms of the content on screen from a first film to a direct sequel, one of the biggest I've seen. As I said, we saw a protagonist swap, which at the time wasn't something Pixar or many other franchises had done. Woody led all the Toy Story films, though later sequels like Finding Dory and Incredibles 2 would follow in its footsteps here. Both those, the genre or identity of the franchise never got redefined. Cars 3 eventually returned the franchise to its roots with a coming-of-age sports underdog story, perhaps or really likely due to the pushback from this film's reception. Beyond the genre change, we saw a lot of elements that were unexplored in this universe, with more fantastical features in these vehicles with the spy equipment. They could turn into planes and submarines now, putting it more in line with the Mater's Tall Tales component of the franchise, which shows some more otherworldly aspects of the Cars universe. Typically, it's played as a tall tale, as Mater puts it, but the joke is that they really happen for those that care about Cars canon like myself. It may make you start questioning things, but the primary viewer of Cars 2 doesn't care or even know about these, likely leading to a poorer perception or at least being perplexed in some way, since the original Cars did have a lot of fans who likely wanted something more in line with that when they returned to this world. Many did say the first Cars was a little too slow-paced for their liking, however. I remember some people enjoying the spy angle more as a result, though others thought the espionage storyline was a little too convoluted. The film ended up being Pixar's lowest rated film by a wide margin and still is to this day. I remember not knowing what a Rotten Tomato had to do with movies in my youth, and it was sad seeing it hadn't been received well back then, and I can stand by that to this day. Cars 2 has all sorts of flair, through spy scenes and racing, and each scene we visit offers a lot of exploration of the Cars world, fitting quite well with the backdrop of the World Grand Prix. I love getting to see Japan and Italy in this world especially. I think Mater is a good choice for this story as well. I know many Cars fans wanted to see a story about lightning racing in his prime, which would have been around this time period. But I don't think there's as much raw potential for story there, at least at face value, and picking up with him closer to retirement in Cars 3 was a good choice for his character, while he's still able to play a sizable role in this second outing. If they wanted to do a spy movie set in this universe, changing McQueen to be a secret agent would have been far more jarring, as he's naturally a more equipped character for this kind of role, I suppose. It's more traditional Pixar to utilize that fish out of water storytelling by dropping Mater right in the thick of it here. I also really enjoy the message the film puts front and center. I believe Mater to be a compelling protagonist. He's not shown to be the smartest or the most competent, but there's certainly a lot of heart to his character, and there has been since his inception. The animation is, of course, stellar, and the score by Michael Giacchino is super versatile, with the Finn McMissile and the other spy themes being some of the best in the genre. Most of the spy storyline was very much in line with that of other spy films like Mission Impossible, so again, I think it was more of a shift in genre than the storytelling itself. Though I could be wrong, some definitely don't like how it's Cars doing all of this. That brings us to maybe the biggest critique of the Cars world being the questioning of how the Cars built that or put this there, which is just a lazy criticism that doesn't impact the story being told. Most movies are going to have some sort of logical errors, but within the world of animation, you're supposed to be able to have this playground to play in. And if you want to get super technical, the forklifts could have done everything, but I think it's weird to harp on these factors. We got a ton of new characters and got to see some of our favorites from the first film still continue to flourish. Doc Hudson couldn't be there with Paul Newman's unfortunate passing, a topic which was re-explored in the next film. To my knowledge, the story of this film was developed after his passing though, but you never know if they had some ideas for his character before that. The film is obviously very commercial. The first Cars brought in $10 billion with a big old B for merchandise alone, before this one even released. So having the ability to produce more toys of characters from all sorts of new regions of the world was probably a big draw for Disney and Pixar. But any blockbuster is rightfully designed to be commercial, and I don't think you can assign it as a lower quality on that alone. And I think more have started to open up to this fact. Yeah, so by this time you can probably tell this isn't about how Cars 2 got bad press, but I'm the odd one out who actually likes it. There's actually tens of us. Kidding. But really, in recent years, there's been a bit more of a positive outlook on the film. Maybe calling it a cult classic is out of my ability to designate, but there's certainly a community out there quick to label it as underrated and better than it's ever been given credit for. As I said earlier, the Cars community is quite large in its own right, with many quite fond of a lot of what the world has to offer, along with the characters in it. There's all sorts of collectors with each and every variant of diecast released, and therefore such individuals are certainly able to appreciate the film or whole series on a more personal level. A whole lot of kids since the first movie came out have had their fair share of Lightning McQueen toy cars. Heck, I assume the majority watching this do or did at some point. A lot of kids grew up with the franchise, and it shows in revenue. As they're starting to become young adults, you can see as they still maintain this positive attitude towards the franchise, with the community seeing constant growth. Sure, there's certainly instances of some believing they've outgrown the franchise, or even just Cars 2, but more I'd say have been singing its praise from this younger generation. And this is in a different vein than, say, someone might look at a preschool pre-K series as Cars 2, and all of Pixar films for that matter target for all audiences. For all of the reasons I mentioned earlier and many more, the film has been looked at better as a point in the franchise and just a film in general as well. You don't have to search too hard to find all sorts of articles claiming it's a great sequel and a completely underrated film, with plenty of videos and posts on social media backing these claims as well. Have critics switched their outlook? Not really, though scores on some of the big review sites have increased over the years, which doesn't mean nothing. While at first the idea that this derailment of the franchise led to the move back to the grounded nature of Cars 3, I wouldn't say Pixar is embarrassed of or hiding Cars 2, like some have suggested. They've continued to produce merchandise based on the film because that's obviously in their best interest, and they'll occasionally include it in the posts on their social media, which makes sense as it's the highest grossing film in the franchise. The franchise hasn't really explored anything that the sequel brings to light beyond anything minor, but the Cars series did return to that off-the-walls look at the universe with cars on the road. I know some were hoping to see Finn McMissile and Holly Shiftwell in the series, or Cars 3, and I did too. They really could have fit in the post-credit scene of Cars 3, I'd say. But at the very least, I think we can say that the sectors of the world that we are opened up to in Cars on the Road can make some of the more jarring aspects of Cars 2 look tame. I don't think they would return to that, or even back to the Cars universe if they were legitimately embarrassed of this movie. On a personal level, I know that many have watched this movie once, way back when it first released, and sure, they may have liked it or disliked it back then, but then for a decade plus, the film only really saw negative discourse, and there'd be crazy traction back then when it was done. You can say these videos were perpetuating truths, or at least the beliefs of those making these, But there's certainly a lot of viewers that haven't seen the movie or don't remember it, and these videos start to form new beliefs on their behalf. On the other hand, with the resurgence of the film and the Cars brand, we're able to reevaluate, and we can start to see videos claiming the opposite. Cars 2 will always represent a time when the masses saw a quote unquote dip in Pixar quality, as it went on to miss out on major award nominations. But I'm at least happy it can represent more than that now to many viewers. I think we should always remember the importance of evaluating a film on its own, though. The fact that it's more beloved now shouldn't tell you it's okay to like it, but that may be a topic for another day. I'd like to take this conversation to the comments now, though. What are your thoughts on Cars 2? Have they changed at all since release, for better or for worse? And what do you think of the hate it's received? I know a lot still dislike this movie, unfortunately no blissful ignorance on my end here, but it is still more openly beloved now. So the title wasn't meant to deceive or anything.
I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. As always, these videos are so fun to make. I love the Cars franchise and talking about Pixar movies with you all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.